Good morning. What an amazing event, an amazing city, an amazing country. We are so happy to be here. Thank you for coming to the European SharePoint Conference on behalf of all of Microsoft. I say that, as Tracy highlighted, this is such a great event that we've brought the biggest participants from Microsoft we've ever sent to ESPC, about 25 different presenters, in addition to all the awesome third-party presenters at this event. So we're really, really excited to be here. I thought I'd start with the recent journey with SharePoint really began 2 years ago. A little over 2 years ago, we had sat down with Satya, and he said, SharePoint is such an incredible asset for Microsoft. It's core to digital transformation. It's core to our ecosystem of developers building custom solutions. It's a catalyst to our development platform and so much more. We need you guys to take it to the next level. So about 2 years ago, we presented a plan to Satya that included not just the evolution of SharePoint and OneDrive, but how things that we hadn't announced yet, like Power Apps and Microsoft Teams, would play into a holistic solution. And we wanted to buy ourselves, frankly, a little bit of time. So the first event I did publicly after that meeting was to come to the European SharePoint Conference in Stockholm. And we got on stage, and we talked about the news that we were doing at that point, but we also promised very big things were ahead for SharePoint. A few months later, the freight train began. On May 4th, being the geeks we are, Star Wars Day, we announced the roadmap for the next generation of SharePoint at the Future of SharePoint event. Satya kicked it off, and then we had all sorts of news, new user experience for SharePoint, new development model leveraging internet technologies, new tools for rapid development around Power Apps and Flow, great new security controls, connections to the rest of the Office 365 family using Office 365 groups. We led very much with the cloud and why that was the best business value and best security, but also at that event on May 4th, we announced the general availability of SharePoint Server 2016. We followed that up with the biggest wave of releases the team had ever done at that point at Ignite. 60 sessions covering the breadth of new capabilities in OneDrive and SharePoint. We rocked that conference, hashtag SharePoint, actually had higher traffic on Twitter than hashtag Azure and hashtag Office 365. Not that we're competitive, but we are. And that really was a signal that very much SharePoint was back and that it was going to lead digital transformation for the company and lead the adoption of new cloud technologies across Microsoft. We did it again this year. In May, we also had a webcast event, a roadmap event we called the SharePoint Virtual Summit. Hundreds of thousands of people tuned in, watched the videos over time, and read the blog posts. And then a few weeks ago at Ignite, we beat our session count and so forth at that event. And in fact, we did 14 blog posts of all the news and announcements for SharePoint and OneDrive, for end users, for developers, for IT. Again, sort of capping off the biggest wave of innovation in the history of SharePoint. And I'm so excited, given this was the event we kicked off our journey to come back to the European SharePoint Conference and share with you not just the highlights from Ignite, but so much more from our team and our great partners hosting sessions at this event as well. But one of the key things about SharePoint is it's not just a product that helps organizations collaborate more effectively. SharePoint is a community where you can network, learn, grow your career, grow your impact. And the community response to SharePoint in our roadmap over the last year has been unbelievable. We have big events, of course, like ESPC that we participate in that is fantastic, and it's great, as Tracy said, to see this is the biggest one yet. But also there's great local free events run by our community, SharePoint Saturdays, if you will. And this is just a partial list of the SharePoint Saturday events around the world. And I've had a chance to go to these in Nashville, Tennessee, Toronto, Canada, Paris, France, Los Angeles and Minnesota in the United States. And just last weekend, before the event, this event, There were 2 SharePoint Saturdays, one in Oslo, their 5th and biggest yet. I think we had almost 300 people to that. And the first SharePoint Saturday in Vienna, Austria, which was an amazing event, and I think they had almost 200 people there. So on behalf of Microsoft, I really want to thank the incredible members of our community. Many of them are speaking at this event. Many host these free events out of their own time around the world. And so if I could ask us all to give a big applause to our community leaders for SharePoint. It's really, I'm biased, but SharePoint is the best community in technology, and thank you for being a part of it and giving us your feedback on how to make it even better. Okay, we don't measure our success, of course, in how many features we ship, or how many sessions we have at Ignite, or how many conferences we have. That's all fun for getting the word out. How we measure the success is what you do with the technology. Do you use it? Does your adoption grow? And so that is the signal that drives our feedback. And we've just been humbled. You know, we've been on this journey to the cloud for a few years. You might have remembered, it was sort of 2008 that Bill Gates at the SharePoint conference in Anaheim announced the broad availability of BPOS that ultimately became Office 365. And we now have over 120 million monthly active commercial users for Office 365. And SharePoint is the second biggest workload after email, Exchange, and growing even faster. In fact, this has been the biggest year of SharePoint adoption in history. More organizations have adopted SharePoint in the last year than any year before. In fact, more in the last 12 months than the first 12 years of the product. So we're over 300,000 organizations using SharePoint. And that's small organizations, medium-sized organizations, and some of the largest organizations on the planet. One of the customers we did a highlight on a couple months ago was Accenture. 400,000 employees, highly confidential client information, global around the world. Accenture is an aggressive customer of ours. I met with the CIO a few weeks ago, and we talked about how in the last year their use of SharePoint and OneDrive has doubled, where they've gone from a petabyte in the cloud to 2 petabytes, and he thinks it's going to double or triple or quadruple in the next year or two. So 85% of the Fortune 500 and equivalent metrics around the world are going to the cloud. Most of our customer base is there. A lot are still on premises, and you'll hear content this week targeted at that, so we're not going to be heavy-handed about that. But it is just great to see how through the cloud that you can get 5-day-old technology in the hands of your user base, not 5-year-old technology. So we're really excited about that. And that momentum, the innovation we've done, the customer adoption has been recognized by the analysts. We're in 7 different leader quadrants or categories. And in fact, we are the only vendor in the industry who is both in the enterprise content collaboration category that's focused on simple document sharing, and the enterprise content services Magic Quadrant that's focused on higher-end enterprise content management. So SharePoint continues to lead the way in being the only content management product in the industry that can satisfy that full spectrum. And we are very grateful about all your support that's made that happen. We don't take it for granted. And one of the most important things we do in events like this is listen to your feedback about how we can do better, what you need next, and so forth. We'll start with a whole bunch of demos showing the latest work we've done, but I wanted to frame this a little bit. And one of the things we've done in evolving to try to focus our message on how we can help organizations do their digital transformation by creating a modern workplace is focus less on features and more organize how we talk about SharePoint around the value it brings to your organization. So there's 6 areas that we highlight. First is helping you share and work together. Next is how you can inform and engage your employees. Then is transforming business processes. 4th is harnessing collective knowledge. 5th is helping you protect and manage information. And lastly, how you can extend and develop business solutions building on SharePoint and the rest of Office 365 and Azure. So those are the 6 pillars of value that we're trying to bring to you and your organization. In each of those, we'll walk through what our framing is for that. We'll do a demo, and then I'll come back and highlight the news. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one, which is sharing and working together. As many of you know, SharePoint sort of spans the spectrum of simple document collaboration, 2 users working on a document together, to the very largest team collaboration where documents could be combined with lists and apps and pages and powerful SharePoint team sites that are connected to our communications tools. So at the document side of the thing, one of the biggest focus areas we've had in the last 2 years is really taking OneDrive to the next level. Best-in-class sync client across PC, Mac, great mobile app support, iOS and Android, access any file for any device, with great support for a spectrum of third-party content, but deep collaboration integration inside the Office apps. One of the biggest areas we focused on as part of OneDrive in the last year is to really make sharing and secure sharing much simpler than ever before, more consistent across Office 365, and make it easier to do secure sharing outside your organization, and we'll show that in a little bit. And all this collaboration, all this empowerment we're trying to do to help transform the digital workplace has to balance that with great security controls. And so that's been a big focus of our strategy, and we'll talk more about that later on in terms of auditing and data loss prevention and things like conditional access support. So we've not just been innovating on end-user simplicity in OneDrive, but also in terms of security insights and controls. As we scale up from document collaboration to a holistic team site where SharePoint can help you organize knowledge and applications and data and so forth in a coherent place, probably the biggest thing we've done in the last couple years in SharePoint is embracing a common security model called Office 365 Groups. And I think we've gotten a lot crisper through the events we did and how we talk about Office 365 Groups. Groups is not an app per se. It's a security model, so you can have a common list of people, and that security model is used across Office 365, which makes it easier for users to understand security, but it also makes it easier for IT to control the use of different applications, because we don't have a different security model in SharePoint and Exchange and Teams and integrating with Power BI and so forth. And we made a bold statement at that May 4th event that we're going to have one simple SharePoint team site experience. It's going to be dramatically simpler than ever before, and every group in Office 365 gets that new SharePoint team site experience. So whether you create it from SharePoint, of course, Outlook, Yammer, Teams, any of the 4 entry paths into group collaboration, there is the full power of SharePoint content management and intranet capabilities under the covers for you to use. And we told that story in May of last year, sort of knowing what was coming, that we announced later in the year, which is our chat-based workspace in Microsoft Teams. We have a comprehensive set of communication tools, email, chat, and social. I think we've given pretty clear guidance about when to use what in the workplace. And no matter how you're talking about content, mail, chat, and social, you're talking about content that lives in SharePoint. And we've taken that integration to the next level. In fact, we've got a great representative of the Microsoft Teams group here who's going to talk about the Teams integration with SharePoint. So not only can you get SharePoint experiences on the web, or in the File Explorer, in the Office documents, or in the new SharePoint mobile app, but if you're living inside a chat workspace, SharePoint can be at your fingertips, if you will, hosted inside the chat stream in tabs in Teams. So we think Teams is a great addition to the collaboration family. And again, SharePoint powers all these communication modes with rich content management. And so that's the framing about sharing and working together. Rather than talk about it some more, let's show it. And let me bring up let me bring up Stephen Rose to show you sharing and working together. Stephen.
All right, I'm very excited to be here today at my first SharePoint Summit. Have some really great stuff to share with you, so let's switch over. And it's not switching over. So will somebody in the back help me for a second on why that's not? Guys, we can't see my machine. So what's really great is this year, from last November, December up until now, we've released over 100 new features and functions for OneDrive. And what's really exciting about that is how much of that you have driven. There we go. It's the little things. 43 of those features were driven by you and your peers through user voice. The #1 feature was Files on Demand, which I'm very excited to announce we were able to bring last month to everyone. And if you've had a chance to start playing with it, it is one of those features that you just cannot live without once you have, because it allows you to see and have access to every file that's important to you from any device without having to use up all your drive space. And what's really great is these beautiful, rich previews that we bring. So we can see all the cloud files, and what's really great is you can see an AI file. That's Adobe Acrobat. Illustrator. I don't have Adobe Illustrator loaded on this machine. We have over 277 file previewers that allow you to see full fidelity, rich thumbnails for files that you need to see, but may not even have installed. This also extends out to things like DICOM, medical files, and 3D files. So we can see all these here. Now, one of my favorite things, of course, is the fact that if I right-click and I go to Properties, and we zoom in, we can see that this folder holds 639 gigs, taking up 0 space on disk. I can choose which files I want to hydrate, which ones I want to have locally, and for your customers who are still using share drives and are looking to move to SharePoint, this becomes a great feature to get them excited and involved and say, look, we can bring that same experience to every device no matter how big that hard drive is. Now, the second thing is, this is great on the desktop, but it's that we brought that same experience to the web. And this is an experience that's improving. This is the new UI. This is rolling out currently. It'll be to all of our users by the end of the month, early next month. And again, based on user voice and all of your feedback, we brought some great new features, like what we affectionately refer to as the eyelashes. The eyelashes tell you when a file or folder is new. Hey, there's something new here that you should take a look at, that you should be aware of. You'll see now very clearly which folders are shared by being able to see the sharing icon. And when we roll over a file, we get this beautiful hover card that tells us it's been shared, who it's been shared with, and allows us to go in and see some great details. Now again, those same file previews I were talking about earlier work, but do you want to see something cool? I've actually taken that Surface Studio. This is a .cool file, which is a 3D file format, and I double-clicked it, and here it is inside the browser, but here's what's really cool. Ooh, all right, your turn. Ooh, yes. So you're able to take these 3D objects, which we now support in PowerPoint and in Office, and be able to see it and preview it, and be able to pinch and zoom and work it with your mouse right there live and in real time. So in addition to being able to see, I can take any one of these files, for example, like our compliance and strategy guide, go ahead and click that, click on information, and I'm able to see not only a full preview of that, which will pop up here on the right. I can go through all the pages. If it's a PowerPoint, I can go through PowerPoint, but I can go down and see who has access, what activity has happened, and easily add and remove access, which brings us to sharing. It was great that we could share internally. Then we added external sharing, but again, one of those things that we kept hearing is, I want to be able to share with people that do not have an MSA, a Microsoft Service account. How do I share with somebody that is Gmail or different domain, but I want to be able to share it securely. So this year, we announced secure external sharing, and I'd like to do a demo for you to show you how well and how easily that works. So I'm going to take this file, I'm going to go up to Share, and the great thing you'll see is this new Share dialog is the same across Mac, across Windows, across web, and now across Office. As you start to share in Office, you're going to see the same dialog is rolled out. Ubiquity is so important to us so that your users have that same experience and you only have to train them once on how to do things, and they're able to continue to do it that way. So we'll go down, and I'm going to pick specific people. I'm going to click Apply. And I'm going to send this to my Gmail account. And I'm going to call this secret doc. And I'm going to hit send. And we'll let that go out. Now, the other great thing, and this is also really nice, is when it comes to sharing, while I'm waiting for that to pop up for a minute, is I also could, to anybody internally, some folks said, I just want to just get a link to something quickly and drop it into an IM. If you're doing an IM, if you want to do something quick, all you need to do is click copy link. It creates that shareable link, hit copy, and that's it. So sharing can be as simple and as easy as you want. Now let's take a look at that secure document that I shared externally. And we'll give that a moment for it to come up. Come on. All right, it's been a little sluggish this morning. It'll pop up here in a moment, and what we will see is it will prompt me to go ahead and go to that document, and then as soon as I do, it will offer me a code. That code will be good for 15 minutes, and once that code is dropped in, I then have access to that document for as long as the user would like for me to based on the admin. So we'll give that another moment. There we go. There it is. So I want to share compliance strategy. So I can see a very nice straightforward doc. There it says Office. It says who sent it, which is nice. We've made it a lot easier. So I go ahead and click open that compliance strategies. And we see here, hey, Stephen, can't do that without a code. I'm like, okay. So we'll give it a moment. And it's now going to send me a code. It will, I promise. It's Gmail. It's slow. So we'll give Gmail a few moments here to catch up, and it'll send me the code, and then once I have that code, I'll be able to click in and get into it. And like I said, that code is only good for 15 minutes and cannot be forwarded, which is great. So we'll let Gmail sit for a minute, and I'll come back to it in a moment, and I'll show you the rest of that and how that opens. We'll give it one more try. Come on, start, important. Come on. Nope, still waiting. All right, no. All right, so we'll come back to it in a minute. Nope, okay. It'll send me one. So the other great thing that we've done, and I want to kind of switch gears a little bit, is start to take a look at SharePoint. Because sharing from OneDrive is great, but it's also making sure that we're able to easily connect through SharePoint sites and through Teams and make that transfer of knowledge and that experience really easy for folks and really, really simple as I start to move forward. So you're going to see here some of the great new features that we've dropped in. For example, the ability to embed a stream video right into the website. The ability to have, obviously, all my news come up, but then to be able to put in surveys. This is a great way to be able to connect, because it's great to go ahead and share out a bunch of docs and what do you think, but it's great to be able to drop these right into the site and make it super easy for folks to work with. Now, what's really great here, we'll go down, we see these great important documents, but I want to show you how we've taken that viewer that we did in OneDrive and how we've now built that technology and ported that into SharePoint. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a new page, and I'm going to say, let's say I have a blueprint for our new office. So I'll say our new digs, and we'll go down here, and it's given me a funky little error, which it didn't do 10 minutes ago. Okay. All right, well, Mr. Site Administrator, you're going to have to give me permission. All right, you know what? I'm going to refresh the page for a second. And, there's my code. When in doubt, take a step backwards. So there's my cool code. So I'm going to go ahead and click and copy. And I'm going to go here, and I'm going to drop in that code. And I could say, keep me signed in, which will not require me then to sign in again. We'll say checking, and boom, there is my compliance strategy. Secure, shared outside, no Microsoft account required, account validation. What do you think? Okay. So let's publish this. Nope, it's not going to let me. It's being funky. Okay, that's fine. We'll refresh you. We'll see if you like to be refreshed and see if that does it. All right, that's okay. We'll move on. So what's great is I could choose page, I could go ahead and choose a viewer, and you will see a full fidelity Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, whatever that is. I can drop that in, again, only the viewer, and allow my users to be able to see what it is that they need. So we're going to continue to work on that. We're getting a lot of great feedback on other viewers that people want to see and that they'd like us to bring into the product, but again, it's that ability to allow your users with the least amount of effort to get the best experience. And as we take a look at experiences, what we're hearing is a lot of folks saying, I love OneDrive, I love SharePoint. How do I start to integrate this into Teams and make a great Teams experience? Well, we can take a look here, and we have this great page with benefits and customer surveys and all of this really good information here in strategy and planning. And I'm going to open up Teams. And what we've done is made the Teams experience be able to very simply and easily bring in SharePoint, because as soon as you create content, you're creating that SharePoint site. So as you've probably seen, we have so many great plugins. I'm going to go ahead and click SharePoint. It's going to come up. It's going to ask me for some of the relevant sites. And I can say, you know what? Marketing. The marketing piece should be a big part of this. I'm going to say marketing. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. I'm going to say, yep, that's the one that we want. Let's go ahead and post that into a channel. And I'm going to call this marketing. And we'll hit save. And we will see this. Yep, right up here at the top. So here's marketing. There is all of that content. There's that blueprint that we were talking about. So we'll go ahead and we'll bring that up. And we're able to see all of that information that was right there inside a team site, be able to pop up and be able to bring that together. So making it easier to share and communicate, to be able to share securely, to be able to tie in what you're doing in OneDrive, bring in that great SharePoint piece and bring it into Teams so that everybody has that same view is a key piece of that. We have a lot more to share. We have a great session today on Teams. We have 2 sessions today on OneDrive, one that I'm doing, another one that Hans Brenner is doing later on today. So we encourage you to stop by. We'll go a lot deeper into these demos and show you some other great stuff. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for showing some of the stuff on the bleeding edge that's on its way to production there. And so let me recap what was new. First is we've complemented our sync technology with integration into Windows 10's Fall Creator Update with something called Files on Demand. Stephen showed you that. Personal work, individual OneDrive, team sites, you can see them all and selectively sync them down or sync them when you need them. And it's really, I think, a unique experience in the industry. Nobody else has combined that with the Office real-time co-auth capabilities in a single offering. We now have over 270 file types supported in OneDrive and SharePoint with those rich viewers, everything from Adobe formats to 3D images to medical images and so forth. And you can see how we're bringing that throughout the Office 365 experience powered by OneDrive's file viewer support. Stephen showed briefly the new user experience in OneDrive on the web. We've introduced a new update consistent with that on Android and iOS. Very simple, so the full power of the content management capabilities in a streamlined user experience. And then we've got this secure external sharing based on a one-time token that is a great complement to other forms of sharing that you might want. We've got the spectrum from anonymous sharing to token-based sharing to allowing external members to be in a group. So you can choose whichever mode makes sense for your collaborative activity. We wanted to focus a little bit more on the unique work we're doing in the Office applications as they come with Office 365. We're not just innovating in OneDrive and SharePoint, we're putting new capabilities in what we call Office 365 Pro Plus. These are the client applications that are streamed from the service. And we've added that sharing dialog to the new versions of Office from Windows and the Mac, as well as web and mobile supports coming. We've got now real-time co-authoring support only against OneDrive and SharePoint in Office 365, cross-platform, PC, Mac, mobile, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. We're really rounding that out. The last piece was the Excel support in both Windows Desktop and the Mac that's coming out now. And we're bringing that collaboration capability not just outside Office in the SharePoint UI, but inside Office. So activities and conversations, app mentions, now you'll see inside these Office applications that are coming from the cloud. And again, we want to do the best possible version of Office on every platform and every endpoint. Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and of course the web. And we've made a big investment in the last 12 months in the web applications, and you'll see in the next few months a lot more capabilities, richer authoring, better performance, better collaboration in the web experience. And Stephen didn't get a chance to show it, but one of my favorite things is we're now doing work between the web applications in Office and SharePoint and the underlying Azure storage so that we can take the largest PowerPoints in the world, open them in a web browser, and maybe those would have taken tens of seconds before. We can now open them in just a few seconds because we're progressively rendering the bytes from Azure Blob Storage through SharePoint into the Office web applications. And again, you can open up the largest files, not just in read mode, but in edit mode in the web application. So we're really excited and proud of the work we're doing around Office's unique integration with OneDrive and SharePoint. As we scale up from documents to entire team sites, the big things we've highlighted there is with the connections to Office 365 groups, you get all these new building blocks that you can sort of glue together in SharePoint. Planner for task management, forms, Stephen showed that quick survey. We've got connectors to dozens of applications, things like Salesforce and GitHub. You'll be able to add web parts for those into your SharePoint team site. So all these resources from inside Microsoft and outside that are centered around connections to Office 365 groups can now be added to your SharePoint site. Easier than ever. But we know there's lots. There's probably, if we had to guess, 1 billion SharePoint sites in the world that were created before the group-based security model. And we want to make sure it's easier to connect those to everything in Office 365. And so we have a feature that we internally called Groupify. That's not the marketing name, where you can take an existing team site, you can change its security model to Office 365 groups, and then you can use all those new building blocks. And lastly, as Stephen showed briefly, the SharePoint pages and lists and document libraries, not only hostable in the browser, but hostable inside a chat conversation in Chat Workspace with Microsoft Teams. So those are the big things we're doing around sharing and working together. I know we've got a lot of detailed sessions on that from Stephen, from Tony East from the OneDrive team. Dan Holm is here. He's going to be here in a minute. He's doing a session on team sites. There's lots of other sessions from many of our partners here where you can go learn a lot more. As we transition from team collaboration up to more publishing and portal scenarios, things we talk about informing and engaging employees around. And this is where SharePoint's really unique in being able to scale up from that team collaboration to these broad communication destinations where you can share content and knowledge and allow people to network and so forth. And this is the place where I'm most proud. When we started this journey 2 years ago, we doubled the size of the design team, and we really sort of doubled down on how could we make creating gorgeous pages that work incredibly fast on the web and the phone much simpler than ever. And so we worked on something I'll talk about in a second called the underlying SharePoint framework, the new SharePoint page model and authoring experience, and with this wave of announcements we came out with at Ignite, added a lot more capabilities for rich layouts and creating these pages, again, that can be rendered both on the web and on the mobile device in the SharePoint mobile app. And we took a special form of these pages to make it easier to broadcast those across their organization and called them news articles. So you can create news on a team site, and then people can catch up with that on the go, and then we'll bubble all that news up to the top level of SharePoint Home and the SharePoint mobile app. And we're going to do a lot more with news. So that's, again, we love all the intranets that have been created around SharePoint. There was a survey a couple years ago, 9 of the 10 best intranets running on SharePoint. We want to take that to the next level to make them more beautiful, more engaging, more relevant, faster, and most importantly, easier to create than ever. So to show some of that and a bit more, now let me introduce Dan Holm. Dan.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey guys, you having a good European SharePoint conference so far? Awesome, hope you're enjoying it. So we're going to pick up where Jeff and Stephen left off. on informing and engaging employees, helping keep the organization on the same page, quite literally. And SharePoint pages really are a fantastic way to tell a story. Whether it's communicating an idea, sharing a policy, announcing a new product launch, whatever your use case might be. So let's take a quick look at a SharePoint page here. I'm refreshing my tabs to help avoid any sleepiness on my computer's part that's been asleep for a little while here. And we can see here a beautiful SharePoint page that encompasses text, pictures, interactive web parts like Bing Maps, beautiful layouts, tables, links to resources, you name it, you can put it all on a SharePoint page. And one great use case for SharePoint pages is news, keeping people informed and up to date. So let's go ahead and create a new news article. Hopefully I'll have a little bit better luck than Stephen did in his tenant. And we're going to go ahead and create a news article about a new travel experience launched by Contoso Adventure Travel here. So we're going to announce Holo Tours. And we'll go ahead and start with the heading, and we can add an image here. So I'm going to go ahead and upload an image. Let's do this one. And then we have the ability to add additional text and such. So I'm actually going to save myself a little bit of time here and open a document that I already created in Word to work on a draft of this particular announcement. So I'm just going to select it all and copy it, jump right back to our web page, and add a text web part. And I can just paste that right in, and all of the formatting is maintained, including bold, italic. If I had tables, they'd be in there, bulleted and numbered lists. So I've got a beautiful way to format text. But now, this is where we start seeing how much better it is to use SharePoint pages to communicate news than something like email. Up till now, most of our companies inform people with broadcast email messages, and all you can really do is text. It's difficult to get images placed in the right place that render well on mobile. It's virtually impossible to do anything more interesting than that. So we're going to go ahead and show what we can do with a more interactive experience on a SharePoint page. First, I'm going to use a couple of columns. I'm actually going to format this section with 2 different columns. Then I want to embed a YouTube video. So the toolbox here has all of our web parts. And recently, we've begun rolling out dozens and dozens of web parts. I've got a small list here, including the embed web part. And I'm going to go ahead and embed the URL to this video. So let's go ahead and get the URL here and paste that right into the box. And that will pop that YouTube video in there. And then I also want to include a file for this particular page. So I'm going to go to my OneDrive and find, actually let me switch to tile view so I can see this a little bit better. So I'm looking for my scooter. There we go. And open that up. And this is one of those 3D images that Stephen was talking about before. And whereas in the past we had a web part that only showed Office document formats, now we have a file viewer web part that allows you to show any of the 270 plus file formats that we've mentioned a couple of times. So I can go ahead and put those in. And then last but not least, I want to give people the opportunity to sign up for this particular program. So I'm going to embed a Microsoft Forms web part. And I've got a form here. I'm going to grab the sharing link and pop that into this dialog. And click Publish. So I created a news article, and that news article now surfaces on the home page of the site. It also will surface on SharePoint Home and on my mobile devices as well. We'll see that in a few minutes. Here's that news article in all of its glory. We open it up, we see the banner, we see the text, we see the video, we see the file. It's a large file, so it takes a few moments to render here. We'll come back to that. And then we've got the form down here at the bottom. And all of these are completely interactive, so we can play the video without leaving the context of the page. We're going to be able to manipulate the 3D file as soon as the network provides it to us here. And I've got to say, is this not more interesting to read than a static email in your inbox? I think so. Isn't this beautiful? Let's give the team a hand for that. They've done a lot of great work to provide interactivity and engagement on these SharePoint pages. And better yet, in the past, communications was often a one-way task. Corporate communications would send out emails, and they would arrive in your inbox, and gosh forbid you did a reply all and spammed everyone's inbox to create a conversation out of that announcement. It's important that communications is two ways and is truly engaging. And so on every SharePoint page, you have the ability to engage in a conversation around that page using the SharePoint page comments. In addition, at the bottom of the page, you'll notice there's a social bar that tells me how many people have viewed the page. So if we go to a page that's a little older than 1 minute, we'll see at the social bar in the bottom, we can see how many views there have been, and soon we'll be rolling out likes as well. So we've got the ability to see the engagement around that page. And that engagement rolls up all the way to the home page of our sites. This is a communication site that brings pages as well as lists and documents and applications together to share an idea broadly across the organization. It has a beautiful hero web part at the top, then there's news, then there's information about who's who, and all of these web parts can be modified just as easily as we did on the page. They're there by default, but that's just a placeholder for us to take this further. And at the bottom of this page, we've embedded the Yammer web part to surface a conversation around this topic so that we can engage employees across the organization in an open conversation. Now, all of this accrues beautifully to the phone as well. So if we jump over to the SharePoint mobile app and look at the News tab, we can see that news articles from across my organization are rolling up so that I can read them on my phone. In addition, if there's an article that I want to read, but I just don't quite have the time right now, there's a new bookmark icon in the upper right corner. I can tap that bookmark icon and save that article to read later. Then, on the lower right of the screen, you can see the new Me tab. When I touch the Me tab, it takes me into a place where I can see content I've saved. So I can see that news article, I can give it a read, and when I'm all done, I can simply unbookmark it. The Me tab is also a great place to get back to work because it surfaces recent content from across the intranet that's relevant to me. So I can see recent documents that I've worked on, documents that are trending, even news and list items will surface right inside the SharePoint mobile application. Finally, communication sites, which we saw on the web, are natively mobile. You don't have to do any work to have a great responsive experience on your phone. So here's that exact same communication site with the hero web part at the top, with the news article, with the people web part, and it renders not just responsively, but it renders optimally for my phone. So rather than the hero web part with 5 tiles on it, I now have a carousel that I can use to swipe through and see the information that's most important to me as a consumer of this site. So SharePoint sites are a great way to tell a story. We've got pages and news, which are a specific form of page that we can use to communicate ideas broadly across our organization. And just to give you a little bit of inspiration for a couple of ways to think about using new communication sites to drive success within your organization, think about creating a communication site to support the adoption of Office 365. You could have a communication site with links to all the resources people need to understand Office 365 in your organization. You can pull videos in from our support.office.com. We post a number of videos to the YouTube channel for Office as well. Link people to key resources and evangelists and champions in your organization. And here we even have an Amazon web part if they want to learn more about digital transformation through Satya's recent Hit Refresh book. So use communication sites to inform and engage your employees. Tell your stories with news rather than email because you can then engage them 2 ways and get real-time measurements as to the impact of your content. Thanks a lot, and let me bring Jeff right back out here.
Thank you, Dan. All right, to recap the highlights of what Dan showed, we've got lots of new web parts to drive engagement and interactivity. I'd really encourage you, if you've not had time, to try out, even in a preview tenant in Office 365, the new experience for page authoring. If your users are familiar with SharePoint 2010 or 2013, how you edit a site, we have found when you show people what Dan just showed, there's sort of jaw drops, and it saves them tons of times, and they get really excited about moving to the new SharePoint. Among those new web parts, we've got a highly optimized Yammer web part with a couple of different views that you can add to different pages and different sites. We introduced at Ignite. We didn't have a chance to show it here. New ways to change the layouts and branding of your pages and sites. And then we've got new provisioning tools so that you can create default layouts for those sites. And if you want to stamp out new team sites and communication sites with your look and feel, you can. But I'd really encourage you to take a look at this, both for the new usability of the experience, but also the underlying architecture. We used to assemble pages on the server in ASP.NET. We've got a new client-rendered model that uses JavaScript in the browser and a mix of JavaScript and native, highly optimized mobile code on the client. So it makes these sites dramatically faster than what was ever possible with SharePoint. The next part of this is the work we've done in the mobile app, and Dan highlighted just one of a few new things that we put in SharePoint Mobile, is the great support for news. You can look at news in the phone. We've got the intelligence of the Office graph recommending which news you see. You've got a Me tab where you can save documents and links to pages and so forth. And then we're adding more and more interactivity and social behavior on those pages inside SharePoint that you can get access to in the mobile app as well as the browser. And then lastly, one thing we didn't have a chance to show is this concept called SharePoint hub sites. Many of you are familiar with SharePoint has sort of a fixed hierarchical model around sites and subsites, and a lot of people have used that model to create their intranet. But it's kind of complicated. It's complicated for users to understand how security and inheritance work, and it's not very flexible to aggregate new sites in different places. Say there's a reorg or a new way to sort of structure the intranet. And so we thought hard about this and spent a lot of time with customers and came out with a new model that we introduced at Ignite called SharePoint Hub Sites, this is a site you can make. It can be either a team site or a communication site. And say it's a parent of a division. Maybe it's the Salesforce and you want local sales offices to hang below it. And that parent will push its navigation and look and feel down to the sites that are part of the hub, but also we can roll up search and news and activity from the children to the parent. And so it's not the hard binding that a site and subsite had before. It's a much simpler, more flexible model, and we'll highlight that in sessions this week as well. All right, so that's what we've been doing around informing, engaging employees. Next area is transforming business processes. There we've got a lot of great underlying work in document libraries and lists, and the ability to build forms on top of those with a new technology called Power Apps, the ability to build workflows around those called, with a technology called Microsoft Flow. I'm going to bring up Chris McNulty to show you that. Chris?
Thanks, Jeff. So good morning, Dublin. Give me a second. Let me get to my demos. Awesome. So transforming business process for us is really about being able to reinvent the ways that we work, because that is the way the digital transformation is achieved. We're really excited about what we've been able to do, first and foremost by bringing the power of Microsoft Flow into OneDrive. One of the key capabilities that we've been excited about is being able to stitch up custom business processes directly here inside OneDrive. As you can see, one of the things I can do now is by being able to invoke Microsoft Flow, I can take a custom process, such as sending documents around inside of OneDrive, being able to send that to people on my team. My manager is going to automatically be looked up inside of Azure Active Directory, and I'll be able to send that document to them and automatically track it through OneDrive. We're really excited about this. The power of Flow is not limited, though, to what I can do just inside of OneDrive. So I'm going to take a look here at a fairly common process in most organizations, which is bringing people in and getting them onboarded. So inside of my HR site, one of my custom lists that I use is to keep track of people who are joining my organization. So as you can see, I'm using our new column formatting feature to spotlight people who are going to be joining within the next couple of weeks. I can see that Alex is going to be starting early next month. I can pick them and say I want to request new equipment from IT. One of the newer capabilities for Microsoft Flow is the ability to add parameters at runtime. What that really means is I can ask a question here saying, what kind of device would Alex like? I can say Alex is going to be working mobily, so we want to get them a tablet and run the flow. And that's going to invoke a custom process that I've built, which is going to notify IT that it's time to get a new tablet purchased. If I jump over to IT, we're going to see the benefits of one of the integrations that Jeff was just talking about before, which is bringing Planner into team sites. By taking a look at Planner, we can come over here, and assuming that everything has synced up, you should be able to see that I have a new tablet ordered inside of Planner. So task management is automated through the power of Microsoft Flow. But we know that being able to work with information at scale means that we need to adapt the power and performance of SharePoint to be able to work with more and more and more documents. So one of the places where I want to highlight this for you is inside of my strategy site. I can take a look at documents. One of the things I want to show for you here is historically, we used to have to invoke limits with SharePoint on premises. And looking at the power and capacity of what we can do with information at scale inside of SharePoint Online, one of the things I want to show for you is here we have a document library with over 6,000 items inside of it, as you can see. We can go all the way up to the full capacity of a SharePoint document library of 30 million items, or a SharePoint Online tenant, which can store up to 30 trillion documents inside of it. And as I'm working with this document library, I'm now able to use predictive indexing. So just with regular user activity, anytime we see something that we think would benefit from the use of an index, instead of reminding you that there's an index and giving you an error message, we're invoking the indexing process on the fly. Early on in the lifespan of a list or a library, we're able to do this, and it's going to manage that capacity all the way on up to the full power of the library. We can see if I open up the filters pane, I can instantly drill into very large data sets, and as I'm scrolling through this, it's just going to keep going and using those indexes to get more and more documents. How do we feel about getting all of the power of SharePoint into the user experience? Excellent. So it's not just, though, about the capacity, but also being able to work with those documents at scale. So here I'm going to take a look at another library I have in my strategy site, and looking at information that I have inside of a document library. Metadata has long been one of the ways that we distinguish what we're able to do, by being able to add custom information to color and optimize the experience of our information throughout all of Office 365. And here you can see I have multiple documents. Let me jump over to my legal site. My legal site. Awesome. So metadata is really powerful inside of SharePoint. One of the challenges that we have is as soon as we make something required, we run into the challenges of making sure that people can keep that metadata updated and groomed. And at scale, it can be a little bit difficult to ask people to keep track of multiple things. So one of the things we've introduced recently is attention views. With attention views, I get an indicator that's telling me there are some more files that are out there that might require my attention. And when I pick that, one of the things it's going to show for me is a couple of documents that are going to need a project name to be added. And I can come in here right now and spotlight those documents. And then using the information pane, I can instantly update the project name for multiple files all at the same time. And I save it, and it's going to instantly update those documents, as you can see, resolve those issues, helping me keep my metadata groomed, which optimizes the performance of all of my lists and libraries for being able to do things like Microsoft Flow to keep people informed throughout my organization. Finally, it's not just about what I can do inside of document libraries, but also being able to work with really large data sets inside of SharePoint. So let's take a look now at one of the lists that I'm using. Again, at scale, we have nearly 20,000 items in this list. And this is a place where we're bringing the capabilities of Power Apps forward. Power Apps, we've been able to, over the past year, take information outside SharePoint, out to those mobile apps to being able to let you work with your information wherever you are on the go. And that's a wonderful story, but we also think it's really important to take those capabilities and bring them inside of OneDrive and SharePoint. So here, as you can see, I have an event list, and we're using this to organize upcoming social events that are going to be used at Contoso. And if I click on one of these list items, as you can see, I'm going to be bringing up a Power App. Any second now. Yep, let's take a look. There we go. And one of the great things about Power Apps is it allows me not just to work with Office data sources, but over 170 data sources inside Microsoft and beyond. As you can see, we're bringing in Power BI, we're bringing in Bing Maps, we're able to look at information. I can say that here's something coming up tonight that I want to volunteer for, so I can sign up on the fly. It's going to register me with Active Directory. And if I want to edit this information, I can see I'm using cascading dropdowns. So I can see because something's happening in Dublin, I can filter the list of possible venues. I can also select multiple items. So we don't need to worry about having security. Let's have a good event with just catering and beverages. I can pick multiple items. I can build these compelling business applications that live inside of SharePoint and be able to save that data, again, bringing information back out to my team. So we're totally stoked about what we've been able to do inside of SharePoint with Power Apps and Flow to help you transform things going on in your organization. Jeff?
All right, to recap, we're not just using Flow for custom workflows, but we're building out-of-the-box features on it, like document approval and feedback, that shows up in not just SharePoint document libraries, but OneDrive. We're using, and Chris showed it, it's not yet in preview yet, so you saw a pre-release version of the Power Apps Forms capability where it's embedded inside SharePoint. That's a great complement to end-user surveys and things like that you'd build in Microsoft Forms. We're doing work, as he said, both on the back end with predictive indexing and on the front end, so you can have lists in libraries with millions of items in it. And then we showed some work that we're doing to allow people to introduce CSS for things like custom column formatting. So a lot of great stuff there around business processes, and that's really a complement to a number of our partners here with great solutions, people like Nintex and K2 that focus on higher-end enterprise workflow. We really think we're going to give a lot of choices and options in this space for transforming business processes. Next area is harnessing collective knowledge around people and search and expertise, enterprise content management. Let me, for that, bring up our own machine learning guru, Naomi Moneypenny. Naomi?
Good morning, guys. How are you doing? Good? Is anybody there? Really? I can see you. Okay, all right. All right, I just wanted to check and make sure we're all there. All right, let me grab the right tab here, and we'll be able to start off. All right, as Jeff mentioned, I wanted to show you a few things. I'm super, super excited to show you the improvements that we've made in search, and I have some other pieces that I want to tell you about that are a little bit different from Ignite as well. So first thing I wanted to show you is really our new Office.com redesigned page. If you haven't seen this, please go ahead and play around with it. It's a really great new experience. It helps you discover not only the applications you have inside of Office, but also some relevant content. And all of these search experiences are really backed by the Microsoft Graph. So I can go ahead, I can hit Discover here. You can see that I'm getting recommended content from across my Office 365 environment. And it's all of that personalization and that intelligence that's going on behind the scenes. So let's go ahead and go over to SharePoint and check out a couple of things in the new search experience. So the first thing I wanted you to notice is that right on SharePoint Home, we do have news from our sites, and we know that those news are being suggested, again, from across the Microsoft Graph. And we can even search for news straight from the taskbar. As soon as I go into the search box, I'm actually getting recommendations of new results, and I'm seeing things, perhaps things based on things that I've worked on before, making it easy for me to go back to content that I saw before, but I'm also getting recommendations of news because of the colleagues that I work for. So all of those collaboration, all of those behaviors that we have inside of the Microsoft Graph, all really coming together to bring a proactive search experience for you. If I go ahead and do a search, let's say something like analysis, you're going to see that I get a whole bunch of different types of documents, and you'll see that I'm getting previews of rich results, but I'm also getting people results as part of it. And so we've spent a lot of time to really put some personalization and intelligence behind this search experience to really help to optimize the kinds of content that you want to see from across all of your Office 365 tenant. So as I scroll down here, you can see I'm getting people results, I'm getting PowerPoint results, I can see things inside of folders as well. If I go ahead and click over onto one of these results here, you can see that it's actually flagging the kind of, where the content where the keyword rather is inside of the content, and I can actually go ahead and see a preview right there from inside of the window. And so our idea here is really that we're actually optimizing that search experience so that you don't even have to leave the page before you're sort of committed. We kind of think of it as like Tinder for search results. We want to make sure that you're actually seeing the result you want before you go ahead and commit to that click. So it's really important to be able to see all of those pieces too. All right, so I can go ahead, I can visualize this content as we mentioned before. I can see a live PowerPoint preview inside of here. And as we mentioned, it's not just PowerPoint, it's not just Office applications. It's those 277 different file types across Office and across the whole network of types of content that you're working with as well. So let's go ahead and explore just a little bit more here. I can click down into Melissa's profile. I see the content that she's been working on most recently. If I go look ahead at the other content she's been there, I can see here on her people card. And that's that same people card that's consistent across the whole environment, across OneDrive, SharePoint, and Outlook. And so I can do a search inside of here, but I can also look through inside of results. And so you can see here, in this case, I'm getting analysis as a match. It's inside a specific folder. So if I go ahead and see all of the matches in this folder, I'm easily able to scope this search down into what we need. So I'm going to add on here XT1000, because that's, of course, an amazing name of a product. Don't call your product that, but if you do go ahead and do it, we'll be able to find it. So you can see here now I'm getting just those results within that specific folder, and it's easily able to preview that document again and be able to check out what we're doing. So, pretty cool stuff, huh? So, I like it so far. Let's go back to a couple of different things that I want to show you here on Office.com. So, I want to, again, explain that this is all backed by the Microsoft Graph. So, we're getting that consistency of search experience, regardless of whether you're searching inside of an Office application, like PowerPoint or in Outlook, but it's also the consistency around our new experiences like Bing for Business, which is in private preview, as well as Office.com. There are a few things that we wanted to show you about how we're uncovering the different ways of doing content. So the first thing is that whenever you upload content, images, and photographs and other types of visual content inside of OneDrive and SharePoint, you can actually go ahead and upload those documents, and it actually doesn't need you to put in meta information anymore. So we can go ahead, I can search for outdoor in this case, and it's actually bringing back all of the photographs inside of my SharePoint and OneDrive that I have access to that have been automatically categorized by Office as being outdoor images. So we're doing this recognition that's automatic. As soon as I basically put in a new image, it's actually looking and analyzing some of that content, and it's actually showing it to me across all of those images that I have available to me. But it's not just images, right? It's not just inside of those images. I can even look for text inside of what those images are doing. So, for example, if I do a search for a receipt, I'm going to be able to get the receipts that I use, and I've been uploading inside of OneDrive. I can see the other ones that my colleagues have been uploading as well. And you can see in here I've got a whole bunch of different images that are showing up as part of my receipts. But, like me, it's very hard to actually remember, right, that you have a specific receipt and what that receipt was for. So you're much more likely to remember what it is that you were doing with that receipt. So I can search for, specific things. So in this case, let's search for parking receipt. And then you'll see that I get returned a result right here. And if I click through onto that result, the parking receipt will actually load up and show me the content, and because it's automatically done that text extraction as part of it. And so when I see that receipt, it'll be very helpful to see that. But I always wanted to mention this because specifically the content that we're doing right now, this functionality, there we go, is loading through Office 365, and it should be in first release in your tenants. We're going to roll this out across SharePoint and OneDrive, and you should all have access to this new text extraction capability. Not just photographs, not just screenshots, not just whiteboards, not just receipts, not just business cards, not just letterheads, but even X-ray images as part of it too. So you should be having this capability inside of your own tenants by the end of the month. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Naomi. All right.
Oops.
We can switch back and
Sorry.
to the recap. That's Naomi. So just to highlight the big things, new underlying search technology leveraging the power of machine learning with the Microsoft Graph. And that trends SharePoint, the Office apps, Bing, Office.com. And we, unlike anybody else in the industry, have a personalized ranking algorithm that leverages all the signals, including collaboration activity, to give you the most relevant results. Naomi showed you a preview of the new search experience, much faster and easier to use. And we didn't get a chance to show it, but when you've got people as a search result, or people throughout Office 365, we're going to augment what we know about them with what's available in LinkedIn. So if you're preparing for a meeting with somebody, you can get all the information, what you know internally, as well as what's available for them on LinkedIn. So that's that pillar. I'm going to briefly cover the next two pillars around security and manageability and developer. A lot more detail on those in breakout sessions. First, of course, we've got great, robust data centers with strict security and compliance of those. But beyond that, we're giving you more insights and control in what's going on. We truly believe it is better to manage SharePoint and Exchange and Office 365 than a 3 or 5 or 7-year-old version, not just because we do a better job running the data center and physical servers, but we give you more features, more capabilities for insights and controls, data loss prevention, auditing, e-discovery, and much more coming every day. And we're flexible about it. You can run SharePoint in a variety of topologies, mixing and matching on-premises and cloud capabilities with hybrid. And I know they've got great hybrid discussions this week as well. So to just highlight a few of the things that are new in this area, and there's more that we covered in the blog post, we have a new admin UI in private preview, much simpler to manage SharePoint than ever before. For large multinational companies, I've got multi-geo support, so including search across them, so you can have OneDrives for some users in North America and other in Europe. We've got bring your own key, so if you want to revoke the key to block decryption of information in Office 365, you can do that. Conditional access policies, different types of sites and users and content. You can set more strict policies for your most secure content. And then to address attacks like ransomware, we've got one of the most exciting things we showed in the last few weeks, which is end-user self-service recovery of mass corruption or delete events. So you can go in and see, my files got encrypted last week. Let me move the slider back just before that and restore all the files to where they are. So a lot of great capabilities. Again, one of the benefits of going to the cloud is better security and manageability than on-premises. Next area is development. What we announced in the May 4th event was perhaps one of the biggest leaps forward in SharePoint. Before, you had to learn SharePoint-specific APIs, ASP.NET, very sort of steep learning curve. And what we really wanted to do is open up the developer party for SharePoint even more broadly. There's over 1 million developers working on SharePoint. We want to make it easier for any developer to get up to speed. And so we've got modern client-side development, UX extensibility with a JavaScript framework called the SharePoint Framework. And we've got data access APIs that we've simplified across Microsoft, provided a REST interface called the Microsoft Graph. So SharePoint Framework for UI, Microsoft Graph for data. And we made a lot of announcements there for that. We've included the SharePoint Framework V1 in SharePoint Server on-prem with Feature Pack 2. We've gone beyond that with even more UX extensibility in SharePoint Framework extensions, which are wicked cool. The developer feedback on these has been fantastic. Expanded the Graph API support and a lot more. And in the next couple of days, we have some pretty exciting news announcements for things we're doing for developers on SharePoint, things that weren't quite ready for Ignite that we're excited to share this week. So stay tuned and come to sessions from Mike Amerlan and Vesa and a few others from our team and great partners. So that's rounding out the 6 pillars. I thought I'd close with 2 things around the journey to the cloud. We do believe that the cloud delivers the best experience for all size organizations and all type of organizations. Better user experience, better economics, faster time to value, better security and controls and insight, and frankly, more fun in your career as an IT professional. Again, you're using 5-day-old technologies to transform your companies, to engage your users, as opposed to 5 or 10-year-old technologies. It's just more fun. And I think we're seeing in the world of digital transformation and creating modern workplaces that inform and engage employees, if you don't do that, your competitors will. So just like previous eras of computing, client server, the internet, we are here to evangelize how embracing the cloud will help your organization be more effective in its core mission and help attract and retain and motivate employees. So we are very much leaning in on the cloud, both from productivity and security. But we recognize not every organization's there yet. We recognize there are some organizations with special legal requirements. We're working to address those with certifications, and we think we've addressed almost every deployment case, but there are still some organizations, of course, that will want to stay on premises temporarily or for the foreseeable future. And so we're supporting that as well. So just to highlight the 2 big investments we're making around the journey to the cloud. One is first-party migration tools. We want to make it very, very easy for you to take an on-premises file server or on-premises SharePoint document libraries and get that to the cloud yourself. We've got services from us like Fast Track that'll do that. We've got great partners, people like ShareGate, Metalogix, and AvePoint, and many more that do great, sort of very sophisticated migration tools. But people asked us for a simple, fast, first-party tool for the basic scenarios. And if you look at all the capabilities that Stephen Rose shared for access to your documents across devices, collaboration, security, you are much better off moving your documents to the cloud in Office 365 than running them in on-premises or third-party cloud storage. So we've got these great migration services. But again, we want to be flexible about adoption, and we want to make our roadmap very clear. So at Ignite, we committed to the next wave of Office on-premises technologies. Office 2019, Exchange 2019, SharePoint 2019, Skype for Business 2019. Those will go in preview towards the middle of next year, release later on next year. It will be a subset of what's available in the cloud today. So it'll be compelling upgrades from what we have in the 2016 wave, but it will be a very significant subset of all the things we're doing around the productivity and machine learning-based experiences in Office 365. And so we just want to be clear about the trade-offs and give you choices and commit to support that investment as well. So those are the things we're doing to give flexibility around deployment. One of the best resources we think we have is case studies about how companies are doing their own digital transformation. Every industry is different. Obviously, Accenture is different than T-Mobile versus Qantas Airlines. Shire Pharmaceutical, an incredible case study. Actually, I believe they're the leading user of communication sites in the world, where even pre-release, their employees were creating beautiful new intranet pages with these communication sites. Hershey's Chocolate, NASCAR runs all their races using Power Apps in SharePoint. So just more and more, and we encourage you to read up on these case studies, talk to people from these companies, because the language of business is what will resonate with your CFO, CIO, CEO about how the cloud can really help transform your organization. So a lot of exciting case studies there, customers.microsoft.com. The last thing I thought I'd talk about is all the resources we have. We've gone from, in 2013 maybe, people told me, hey, the pace was good, but maybe you could pick it up. Where most companies I talk to today tell me, you guys are overdoing it, you're going too fast. I think that's the reality of every organization. Product cycles faster than ever before. If your organization doesn't go as fast as it can be, it won't meet the needs of its constituents. Same thing for us. And so that's where we are in sort of innovation. We want to give more value to you than any other vendor in the industry, faster than ever before, so you can bring it to your business. So where to go to keep track of that? We did a set of blog posts at Ignite. You can see aka.ms/spignite. You can see the detailed information, including the roadmap. What we showed today was in a pre-release tenancy. So we showed some stuff that's shipping, some stuff that's in first release, and we showed, as you saw, some things that are pre-release. And so you can get in those blog posts where we're going. And then all the sessions that we did at Ignite are available online at that URL. But we brought the best of those and made them even better based on feedback and included a whole bunch of partner sessions at the European SharePoint Conference. I was flipping through this last night, and there's some amazing, amazing content this week. And again, we're very fortunate that all of you have come here and that our partners and members of our team are here to present. So please, we welcome your feedback on that. Please tell us what you need in the product and content and future events. And with that, let me close by thanking everybody. Thank you to Tracy and team. What a wonderful event in a wonderful city. Enjoy the European SharePoint Conference. Thank you.